And let's move on to our last presenter, Jocelyn Suzuka.
Okay, I would like to confirm that you can see my presentation.
Confirming.
Cool. Okay, so hello, my name is Jocelyn Suzuka. I would like to start by giving a few thank yous to MFA Director Ellen Mueller, Administrative Assistant Kylie Van Note, my mentor Frenchie Lunning, my thesis committee members Jen Caruso and Pong Wu, instructors Gonzalo Reyes, Abigail Manneberg, and of course my group of MFA peers, the close-knit and supportive class of 2021. I was born in Kyoto, Japan, and I was raised in Stillwater, Minnesota. My mother is Japanese, my father is American. Therefore, I am, by definition, Japanese American. I create stuffed animals. By their very nature, stuffed animals demand a connection with their audience. At somewhere between 6 and 8 inches tall, my plush toys are of a scale that feels full in the grip of small hands, yet tender in the grasp of large ones. If you give one of my animals a squeeze, it holds almost no resistance. The stitch I use to make my plush is an inheritance from my Japanese family, Naminui, meaning one steady direction stitch. Naminui involves a series of consistent, even, and tight stitches which are loaded onto the needle. This was the first and only stitch I learned as a child, thus I used it for everything. I use it even now as a foundational stitch for all my animals. Working with a painter's eye and a crafter's hand, I draw, dye, embroider, and I stitch my creations. When I make my animals, the ultimate goal in the making process is to create an object with a sense of identity. For if the animal has a semblance of identity, it is all the easier for an audience to attach themselves to it. Almost all of the fabrics I use for my animals start off as white, clean and blank as a newborn infant. I always dye the material myself, because it is essential that I personally guide my animals towards the chaos of color. Japanese designer Ken Yahara describes it best when he discusses white as a Japanese aesthetic experience. White exists on the periphery of life. The shell of the egg is like the membrane that forms the boundary between this world and the next, and when it breaks, what emerges is no longer white, but imbued with the color of the animal. Is this not the moment when newborn life starts walking towards chaos? Dyeing the fabric divorces my animals from being untouched images of imagination. As the dyeing process can be unpredictable and difficult to manage, it is indeed the first introduction of chaos to disrupt the carefully planned identity of the animal. My sources are rooted in my inheritance of a complicated family archive. Within this archive is a collection of photos taken by my great-grandfather, Satoru. He was a photographer for the Japanese army during the invasion of China in World War II. The archive contains images of marching Japanese imperial troops mixed alongside photos of the family he was so proud of, his wife Kikue and their infant daughter Nobuko. These photos of family love got caught together with images of imperialism, Japan's national shame. After his death, this collection of photographs were banished by Kikue as a pile in the bottom drawer of a forgotten dresser. This is where it remained for 2 generations. After Kikue's death, my mother discovered the photos. In it, there were photographs of Nobuko as an infant, pictures of Kikue as a young woman, and countless images of Satoru, a proud young son, a solemn-faced soldier, a smiling husband. I wonder how many aspects of their lives were corrupted from proximity to Satoru's connection to wartime violence. It is an interesting turn of fate that the photographs came to belong to my mother. She is the black sheep of her family, excommunicated by her family for leaving Japan to live in America. Due to the foundation of what I am, a Japanese American, I inherited the shame placed upon my mother for leaving Japan. Thus, it would seem that the forgotten shame has accumulated now in America, my mother, myself, and Satoru's photographs. As an artist, I am arrested in the tension created by the existence of this family archive. I attempt to process the abjection inherent in this family. My work moves across generations. This puts me in dialogue with others who use art making to process intergenerational family trauma. Roger Shimomura is a Japanese-American painter who depicts icons of American pop culture in Japanese forms, but of particular interest is his American Diary series. In it, he creates paintings which use the visual language of Japanese woodblock prints. The paintings illustrate the diary his grandmother kept when their family was held in a Japanese internment camp in the 1940s. An American Diary is powerful through Shimomura's collaboration with his grandmother's crisp recording of her time in the camps. Another work of cross-generational collaboration is Art Spiegelman's comic books, Mouse, A Survivor's Tale. Here, Spiegelman is retelling his father's experience of surviving the Holocaust in Poland. But in Mouse, the Jewish people are mice, the Germans are cats, and the Polish are pigs. As a comic artist, Spiegelman's elevation of common forms has made it possible for following generations of artists to use the vernacular to tell nuanced and culturally heavy topics. It is from my mother that I learned to sew. I watched her make felt and cotton mascot toys of the characters I loved. I did not realize until my first year in the MFA program that my mother learned the Naminui from her mother, Nobuko, and that Nobuko learned the stitch from her own mother, Kikoe. Thus, I realized a direct line existed, straight to the heart of the family. As thin yet strong as the thread in which it is made, the steady Naminui is an anchor for connection from generations of mothers to daughters. Stuffed animals are given to children by their family as tokens of love. A truly loved stuffed animal will acquire acts of care and affection. Its filling will be squeezed by hugs, and its skin will absorb tears. A fragment of the spirit of the owner is pressed into the very fibers of an animal. In his 1933 book, In Praise of Shadows, Japanese novelist Tanizaki Junichiro spoke of the glow which objects acquire over the years. He stated that the words denoting this glow describe a polish that comes of being touched over and over again, a sheen produced by the oils that naturally permeate an object over years of handling, which is to say, grime. For better or worse, we do love things that bear the marks of grime, soot, and weather, and we love the colors and the sheen that call to mind the past that made them. The past that made them, and indeed the hands as well. The photographs from Satoru's archive have acquired this grime, fingerprints and tears. These are remnants of the hands which have held them and hands which have hidden them. These hands which, for generations, have photographed, painted, drawn, embroidered, and sewn. Through craft, care, and even concealment, these hands are connected. To make a stuffed animal is to make a promise. When I sew an animal, I am promising that it will eventually transfer to another set of hands. Each animal made is a promise for a future connection between myself as the maker and whoever the owner in the future may be, a promise constructed by an inherited stitch and fulfilled by the care and love of another. While it is always important to build tactile connection between people, it has become an altogether pressing matter during the age of global pandemic. Within the past 2 weeks, the new family I started has experienced the loss of a related loved one to COVID-19. In the aftermath, the most haunting thoughts are those of words left unsaid and conversations left unspoken, and relationships left torn. Therefore, moving forward, repair must be attempted where it is possible. My grandmother Nobuko is still alive, though she is in questionable health. I fear reaching out to her because I fear her rejection. But I now realize that the real danger is in waiting too long and suddenly losing the chance altogether. These current times act as an accelerant, and there is urgency in the air. Thus, I am making stuffed animals of Nobuko's parents, Kikoe and Satoru, who she misses very much. Upon their completion, I will send them to her. Without being given and used to build a connection, my animals are like the white of my undyed fabric. I need to release control over my plush if I want them to accumulate the sheen of care imprinted into their fibers. I want Nobuko to know me, not as an American, but as her granddaughter, who inherited not her shame, but her stitch. I hope that the soft, stuffed animal representations of her parents will give her comfort. But if they don't, even if I never get a response back, I will have tried, and I will have given her the chance to help fulfill the promise of connection inherent in a stuffed animal. So, thank you very much for listening to me speak today.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Again, we'll open up the Q&A. You can drop your question in the chat or the Q&A section. Here's a question from Kyle. Since stuffed animals are comfort items, do you use them as a way to comfort yourself by making them or using them?
Both. It's embarrassing to admit, but yeah, they're a comfort to me. The making process is a comfort to me. It's meditative. It's a steady, consistent thing which you can rely on. And I used to be a painter. I guess I still am a painter. I don't know, but there's so much weight to every mark that I felt there was so much weight to every mark when you make a painting. But with sewing, it's not so. So the process of making them is comfort to me. Having them around, it feels like I have company, so that's fun. So yeah.
Good answer. Do you have any other questions? Oh, Darren wants to know, will you document your effort to reach out to your grandmother, and how will you do it?
There's only so much documentation I can do. I can take photos of the letter, the package. I can screen capture the tracking, but at some point it's out of my hands. And the great danger to this is that I have no control at some point. And I really could just get no response back, which is entirely likely. So it's a sacrifice to spend over 50 hours on an object, two objects, so 100 hours, and send it off and not know what happens. But I think this is something worth doing.
A knowable risk. Well, building off of that, Susan Fink wants to know, do you see these objects as unique, as one of a kind, or is each object as unique as your story itself?
As unique as my story itself. I do see them as unique, but I don't believe others will. They're intrinsically tied to my story. Yeah, I don't know. I have to think on that a little bit. Yeah.
And that's a good question to ponder upon.
Mm-hmm.
Kate Gunther asks, do you know the pages of the Velveteen Rabbit that talk about what it means to be loved?
Yes.
This is less a question, but just an appreciation of your work and how it reminds me of that book and its understanding of being beautiful when all your fuzz and stitching is worn away.
Yes, that was on my scrap pile for this presentation. I love the Velveteen Rabbit. Thank you for bringing that up.
We have time for a couple of more. If anyone wants to drop any questions in the chat or the Q&A. Yao asks, I see narratives and emotion in your photography. How does photography help with documenting your stuffed animals?
Photography, it's interesting because it starts to take on a different role than what I discussed here. I guess it speaks to the identity of each animal. I can pose them in particular ways to bring out their individual little personalities, highlight those, create settings and situations in which they seem alive. And really, I guess it's a way to create connection with audience and viewer without actually having that tactile experience, which is very important during these times.
Oh, this is a really good question from Melandra. Do you consider both sides of your family when creating this work, and how will they react to it?
I'm going to find out how they react to it because this is my first time that both sides of my family are hearing me talk about my work. But I'm sorry, Dad, I do not consider both sides equally. And that's because there's tension point in one side, and there is one side in which I have not experienced almost all my life. And it's where what I'm deprived of that I find the most fascination in. So, yeah.
Fear and curiosity of the unknown. Kyle asked, do you see connections between the photographs of your stuffed animals and your grandfather's archive?
Not really, because I feel like I do really value these stuffed animals I make, but I don't want to be too, well, kind of. I don't know, perhaps. It's tricky because I'm walking this fine line of being disrespectful. These are extremely, no, I don't even want to get into that, but I got a half answer of kind of. Sorry.
No, it's totally fine. I think we should stop there just because your time, you have 1 second left. But thank you, Jocelyn. Let me just pull up my screen real quick. Thank you, Jocelyn, and thank you everyone in the class of 2021 for sharing your work with us today. And thanks for everyone who showed up. And for those of you that are interested in seeing these students work in the spring, please keep your eyes open for the class of 2021 MFA show at the MCAD Gallery. And if you can't wait till then, this Friday, December 4th, the MCAD MFA students are doing a virtual open studios on the MCAD MFA YouTube channel. For more info, please go to mcad-mfa.com. And finally, let's give it a warm round of applause for having completed another important milestone in their progress towards degree completion.